It was the youngest daughter's birthday, but her mother had given the only new dress to the eldest daughter, and the birthday girl had to wear a yellowed old dress because the family had no money left to make 3 dresses in order to make the marriage between the eldest daughter and her ducal fiancé go smoothly. Her mother had spent her best dresses on the oldest one. Today's party was nominally a birthday celebration for her youngest daughter, Natalie. But in essence it was a matchmaking event in addition to her eldest sister's ducal fiancé. Her mother had chosen a poet from a modest family, but from a good background, and Natalie happened to like reading poetry, so it was a match made in the same way. Before the guests arrived, her mother urged her 3 daughters to keep their mouths shut and to pay attention to etiquette. And most importantly, the eldest daughter had to hold on to the Duke's heart. After explaining to her daughters what they needed to pay attention to, she went back to her room to find her husband. But as soon as she opened the door, the smell of alcohol hit her. Since the family's decline, her husband had been drinking heavily, and his favorite violin was out of tune. Today, he wanted to play at her birthday party, but he couldn't remember the melody he once knew. In order to prevent her husband from ruining the party, Natalie's mother took the key from the table and locked the door from the outside when her husband was unsuspecting. Soon the 3 invited men knocked on the door with gifts, the most expensive of which was from her eldest sister's fiancé. Natalie politely thanked them, but didn't even look at them and handed them over to the servants behind her. While the man her mother had chosen for her was asked to recite a poem in front of the audience as a gift, Natalie was at a loss as to how to refuse. But the doorbell rang, and it was only by ringing that Natalie's ears were momentarily cleared. The guest was Natalie's best friend, Ida, whose appearance made Natalie's second sister's fiancé's eyes glaze over as he was completely taken by this generous beauty. While Ida didn't even notice the hot glances cast her way as she presented her best friend with a birthday gift of a poem by Natalie's favorite poet, Pushkin. Just as the party was about to begin, Natalie's father came out playing the violin, and Natalie thought he had slept in, not realizing that her mother had locked him up. While Natalie was listening to her father's solo, her date quietly stood by and recited a poem he had written. But what he wrote was devoid of style and emotion, and a far cry from the Pushkin she admired. Natalie listened to just a couple of lines, and then stepped away, not wanting to clog up her ears. But when the song was over, her father asked for a glass of wine so that her husband wouldn't spoil the matchmaking event. Natalie's mother rushed to take the man away with the servants in an awkward manner, not realizing that all the young people in the room had their own concerns. First, Ida sat down at the piano to play a piece for the ball herself, not realizing that Natalie's second sister's fiancé had volunteered to help with the music. Then the poet came to Natalie's side to read to her, but the person who helped Natalie out was her future brother-in-law, the Duke, who asked Natalie to dance. With the joyful music playing on the dance floor, 2 nimble figures also instantly became the focus of Natalie, although thanked the Duke to help her escape. But she stole the first dance belongs to the big sister is obviously to create another embarrassment. At this time, her mother also returned to the hall and stood in the doorway, signaling with her eyes that the eldest daughter should take the initiative to ask the Duke to dance, but she was too shy to go forward and eventually watched her marriage go away. Just like her second sister, at night when both sisters had already gone to sleep, Natalie was still reading by candlelight from the book of Pushkin's poems that her friend had given her, while keeping a close eye on the door for any sign of footsteps, and doing everything she could to extinguish the candle. She knew that her mother didn't like Pushkin, and thought that he was the kind of prodigal that he was rumored to be, which is why his poems were not popular in the family. But every time she read the words, she knew that she was not interested in him. However, every time she read the words inside, Natalie was moved and convinced that the man who wrote such beautiful poetry must be a warrior with a pure and beautiful heart, unaffected by worldly condemnation. It took Natalie all night to finish the book, but at first light her mother came to her with an excited look on her face. She threw the other 2 daughters out, leaving only the youngest to tell her that the Duke had come to visit again before dawn. But this time it was clearly for Natalie. Her mother was concerned about how to reject Natalie's match, but Natalie was worried about how to explain to her sister that the Duke had always been her favorite. But her mother didn't care. As long as the Duke married one of her daughters, whichever one of them it was, it would change the family's poor status quo. She'd already asked the tailor to make her eldest daughter's dress smaller, and this only new dress would be worn by Natalie from now on.